Welcome to this emotional story. This is the story of a powerful billionaire, a homeless mother carrying a painful past, and two little twins whose innocent words changed everything in one moment. It is a story about pride, loss, memory, love, regret, and truth. Most of all, it is a story about how life can return to us in the most unexpected ways. The man everyone knew in the city of Seattle, people knew the name Preston Hale. He was one of the youngest billionaires in the country. His face appeared in business magazines, charity events, and financial interviews. He owned a large real estate company, a hotel chain, and several investment firms. People admired his success, his confidence, and his sharp mind. From the outside, Preston's life looked perfect. He lived in a glass mansion above the water. He drove rare cars. He wore expensive suits. His office sat at the top of the shining tower in the downtown Seattle. Every room around him looked polished, quiet, and controlled. But people only saw the surface. The truth was much colder. Preston had become successful by trusting only numbers, contacts, and strategy. He believed emotions made people weak. He believed the world respected strength, not softness. He had trained respected strengths, and he had trained himself to stop looking at the pain for too long. He gave money to charities when it looked good for the company, but he never let himself sit close to human struggle. Years earlier, Preston had loved ones. That love had ended in silence, confusion, and wound he never truly faced. After that, he buried himself in work. He became harder, colder, more distant. He no longer believed in promises that lived outside business. His assistant, Naomi Mercer, knew this better than anyone. Naomi had worked with Preston for 6 years. She knew his schedule, his habits, his moods, and quit emptiness he carried behind his perfect image. She noticed that he stayed late at the office even when no work remained. She noticed that he often stared at the city for long minutes without speaking. She noticed that he avoided any conversation that moved too close to family, love, or the past. One cold November morning, Naomi entered his office, holding a folder and a cup of black coffee. "You have the downtown shelter board meeting at 11, she said. Then lunch with the hotel partners, then the land development review at 2. Preston did not look up immediately. "The shelter meeting is still on." "Yes." He finally looked at her. "You know I only attend those once a year." "I know," Naomi replied. "But your name is tied to the renewal funding. They want you there." He gave a small, tired breath. "Fine." Naomi hesitated, then ended. "The shelter also asked if you would do a walkthrough before the meeting." He picked up his coffee. "That is unnecessary. It may help the press coverage." That got his attention. He nodded once, then scheduled 10 minutes. Naomi wrote it down, then quickly left the office. Preston stood and walked to the window. Rain touched the glass lightly. The city below moved in cold gray patterns. He looked calm, but something in him always tightened when shelters, family programs, or children entered his schedule. He never admitted it, but such places forced him too close to human truth. And human truth always threatened the walls he had built inside himself. The woman on the sidewalk that same morning, several blocks from Preston's office, a woman named Delaney Brooks sat outside a closed bookstore with her twins wrapped in second-hand coats. Delaney was 29 years old. Her face still carried traces of the beauty she once wore easily, but life had added her hardships to every future. Her cheeks were thinner, her hands were rough from stress and weather. Her eyes looked older than her years, not because they lacked hope, but because they had seen too much. Beside her sat her twins, a boy and a girl, both 4 years old. The boy's name was Milo, the girl's name was Maeve. They were quick children, unusually gentle for their age. Hardship had made them observant. They watched everything. They listened carefully. They learned early when to ask for food and when to stay silent. Delaney fixed Maeve's scarf and kissed Milo's forehead. You both stay close today, she said softly. It is going to be cold. Milo looked up at her. Are we going to the warm place again? The shelter, yes, Delaney said, if there is space. Maeve leaned against her mother's arm. Mama, will we get soup today? Her voice stayed soft and calm, but inside she was deeply tired. Only 3 years earlier, Delaney had lived a completely different life. She had once worked as a children's music teacher in Portland. She had rented a small apartment, owned a piano, and believed in small, honest dreams. She had not been rich, but she had peace. Then her mother got sick, medical bills rose, her work hours changed, then came pregnancy, financial strain, and one difficult decision after another. The father of the twins had not disappeared because he was cruel. He disappeared because life tore them apart before the truth could fully speak. That truth lived quietly in Delaney's heart every day. She never hated him. She only carried the pain of not knowing whether he had forgotten her, misunderstood her, or simply moved on. She had raised the twins alone from the moment they were born. She had worked whenever she could. She cleaned dinners, served coffee, and sold homemade crafts online during better months. But rent kept rising. Work became unstable. Then one landlord sold the building, and within weeks, Delaney and the twins had nowhere safe to go. They drifted between cheap motels, friends, couches, shelters, and borrowed rooms. Now, after one especially hard month, they were living day by day. Still, Delaney kept one private rule. No matter how hard life became, she would not let bitterness raise her children. She taught them kindness, patience, and honesty. She told them stories at night. She sang softly when they could not sleep. She turned pieces of bread into little games so they would laugh before eating. She made poverty look smaller than her love. That morning, she looked at the passing cars and quickly prayed for one small opening. Just one. The meeting that changed nothing. At 11, Preston arrived at the downtown shelter with 2 company representatives, a local reporter, and Naomi. The building was old but clean. Staff members greeted him politely. Cameras remained at a respectful distance. A director named Helen Carter thanked Preston for his continued support. Noted with practiced courtesy, they began the walkthrough. Preston passed rows of folding chairs, donated blankets, and tired faces. Mothers with children, elderly men carrying worn bags, veterans, workers who had lost housing, teenagers avoiding eye contact, volunteers moving quickly with trays and forms. Preston saw them, but he did not really let himself feel them. He had trained himself not to. Alan spoke as they walked. We are seeing more women with children this winter. Housing costs are rising faster than many can manage. Short-term help is becoming long-term need. Preston gave a professional response. Send updated numbers to my office. Helen nodded. We will. As they moved toward the entrance area, Delaney arrived with Milo and Maeve. She looked exhausted, but she still stood with quiet dignity. The twins held her hands, one on each side. Rain had touched the edges of their shoes. Delaney asked the front desk worker if there was any room left for daytime family sitting. The worker said gently, we can fit you for a few hours in the children's section. Relief crossed Delaney's face. She turned with the twins and nearly walked into the edge of Preston's group. For a brief second, Preston looked at her. She looked back, neither moved. Something flashed across his face, but it was gone so quickly that even he did not understand it. Jelani lowered her eyes, first the guided the twins aside. Preston continued walking. Naomi noticed the moment. She looked from Preston to Jelani, sensing some strange quick tension, but she said nothing. As the group moved toward the boardroom, Milo twisted in his mother's hand and looked back. The little boy stared at the Preston with unusual focus. Maeve did the same. Children often notice what adults miss. Something in Preston's face, his height, his eyes, his jawline. Perhaps something even deeper had caught their attention. Mama, Maeve whispered. That man looks familiar. Jelani's heart skipped once. She quickly led them forward. Come on, sweethearts. But she did not look back, not yet. A past buried too deep, the board meeting ended around noon. Preston signed the shelter funding approval without much discussion. The press took photos, he shook hands, he prepared to leave, but as he walked toward the entrance, he heard children laughing softly from a nearby room. He glanced inside without meaning to. It was the family section. Several children sat on a rug coloring paper stars. A volunteer read a simple story aloud. Jelani sat near the wall with Milo and me pressed close to her sides. She looked calmer now. She was helping me hold a blue crayon. Preston froze for half a second. There was something about the shape of Jelani's face, the softness in her expression when she looked at the children, the tired grace in the way she moved. A feeling rose in him that he did not want to name. He turned away almost immediately and kept walking. At the car, Naomi opened the door but stopped when she saw the look on his face. Are you alright? I'm fine, Preston said. You do not look fine. He got into the car. Drive. Naomi closed the door and sat in the front passenger seat beside the driver. As the city moved around them, she looked back once. Preston stared out the window with a rigid expression. She had seen him stressed. She had seen him angry. She had seen him exhausted. But this looked different. This looked like a memory. Back at the office, Preston cancelled lunch. He entered his private office, shut the door and stood still for a long moment. Then slowly, unwillingly, the past came back. 6 years earlier, before the billions expanded and before his name dominated financial news, Preston had spent a summer in Portland working quietly on a small development project under a different company branch. During that time, he had avoided his usual world and lived more simply than anyone expected. That was where he met Jelani. She had been teaching music classes at a community center and working evenings at a family cafe. She laughed easily then. She wore plain dresses, tied her hair back, and played piano for her children with a warmth that filled a room. She did not care about power. She did not seem impressed by money. In fact, when she first met Preston, she had no idea who he really was. That was part of what drew him to her. For the first time, he was being seen as a man, not a name. Their connection grew slowly. Coffee turned into walks turned into conversation that lasted for hours. They talked about childhood dreams, books, music, fear, and purpose. Jelani told him she wanted a family one day, but only if love felt safe and real. Preston told her he wanted a life that meant more than inherited wealth. By the end of that summer, he loved her deeply and she loved him too. But then came the sudden collapse. Preston's father suffered a serious health emergency in New York. Preston was called away immediately to handle major business responsibilities. The departure was rushed. Communication became messy. Jelani discovered she was pregnant days after he left. She tried to contact him, but the number he had used during that summer was cut off by the company. She sent a letter to the Portland office, but it never reached him. A manager redirected it during the chaos of corporate transition. Preston, on the other side, believed Delaney had chosen silence. He reached out through the old apartment's address she had once given him, but she had already moved to the care for her sick mother. His letters returned unopened. One mutual contact told him Delaney had left the town and moved on. He thought she no longer wanted him in her life. The hurt turned into pride. The pride hardened into distance. Over time, he buried that chapter, or at least he tried. Now, standing in his office years later, he passed both hands against his desk and whispered one name he had not said loud in years: Delaney. The room left suddenly smaller. The twins noticed first. 3 days passed. Preston told himself it was coincidence. He told himself memory was playing tricks on him. He told himself the twins in the shelter room could belong to anyone, but none of that claimed him. But none of them calmed him. On the 4th day, Naomi entered his office with his afternoon schedule. He interrupted before she could have begun. The woman from the shelter, Naomi blinked. The one with the twins. He looked at her sharply. You noticed her? Yes. He was silent for a moment. Then he asked, Can you find out her name? Naomi studied his face. I can try. I want facts, not assumptions. All right. By evening, Naomi returned with a small notebook. Her name is Delaney Brooks. She sat carefully. Preston's jaw tightened. She has twin children, Milo and Mev. Age 4, no listed partner, temporary shelter status. She has moved between Portland and Seattle over the past few years. Before that, she worked in children's music education and part-time service jobs. Every word landed heavily. Naomi hesitated. Do you know her? Preston did not answer directly. Instead, he asked, Any background on the father? No name listed. He turned away toward the window. Naomi spoke more softly. Preston, if this is personal, you do not have to carry it alone. He gave a bitter smile. That is exactly how I have carried everything. After she left, Preston sat alone until evening darkened the city. Delaney Brooks. It was her. There was no longer room for doubt. The next morning, Preston did something unusual. He went back to the shelter alone. No cameras, no staff, no press. He wore a dark coat and parked down the back. Inside, the family section was quieter than before. Delaney sat near a table helping Milo stack paper cups into a tower. Mev was drawing cards with a dull red pencil. When Preston stepped into the room, Delaney looked up. This time there was no confusion in her eyes, only shock. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Milo stood. He looked at Preston with curiosity that felt almost natural, almost familiar. Maeve stood beside him. Children have a strange way of walking toward truth before adults are reached. The twins moved closer to Preston slowly, carefully, studying his face. Delaney rose immediately. Milo, Maeve, come back. But the children did not stop. Milo looked up and said in the small voice, Mama, that is him. Delaney went pale. Preston's heartbeat pounded in his chest. Maeve held Milo's hand and whispered, He has our eyes. The room felt frozen. Delaney's breathing grew uneven. Kids, come here now. Then Milo looked directly at Preston and asked the question that turned the air into silence. Are you our dad? Preston did not move. Delaney closed her eyes for one painful second. Around them, the volunteer at the desk quickly looked away to give privacy. Preston finally spoke, but his voice had lost all of its usual control. What did you say? Maeve answered this time. Maeve answered this time. Mama said our dad had kind eyes. Preston looked at Jelani. She looked as if years of buried pain had reached the surface all at once. Please, she said softly, not here. The truth delayed too long. The shelter director gave them access to a private counseling room. Inside, the twins sat with juice boxes and coloring pages at a nearby table while Jelani and Preston faced each other across several years of silence. Neither knew how to begin. Finally, Preston asked, "They are mine." Jelani's eyes filled at once, but she stayed composed. "Yes." He looked as if the floor beneath him had shifted. "You knew? I found out after you left Portland. I tried to contact you. I tried to." His expression changed. "Then what happened?" Jelani told him everything. The missed letters, the returned address, the rush to move to care for her mother, the corporate phone number that stopped working, the mutual contact who told her Preston had gone back to his old life and was impossible to reach, the pregnancy, the fear, the year of survival. Preston listened in total silence. When she finished, he sat back slowly and put one hand over his mouth. For the first time in years, the billionaire who controlled buildings, companies, and fortunes looked completely powerless. "I thought you left me," he said at last. Jelani gave a sad smile. "I thought you forgot me." His eyes dropped to the floor. The twins continued coloring quickly, unaware of the full storm in the room. Preston looked at them, then really looked. Milo had his brow. Maeve had his eyes. Both of Jelani's softness. Emotion struck him so hard he had to turn away for a moment. "I should have looked harder," he said. "You did not know. I stopped searching too soon." "So did I," Jelani replied. There was no anger in her voice. That hurt him more. He asked quickly, "How long have you been homeless?" She answered honestly, "On and off for almost 9 months. Truly homeless for the last 7 weeks." He closed his eyes. "You are raising my children in shelters." Jelani's voice remained gentle. "I was raising our children the best way I could." The truth of that sentence sat between them with painful dignity. Preston looked at her again, but now he was not seeing a homeless woman in a shelter. He was seeing the woman he once loved, carrying years he was never there to help with. He was seeing the mother of his children. He was seeing his own absence. Milo walked over holding a tray. He looked up at Preston and offered the paper. It showed 4 people holding hands under a yellow sun. 1 man, 1 woman, 2 small children. Preston took it with shaking hands. "That is us," Milo said. Jelani covered her mouth, trying not to cry. Preston crouched to Milo's height. "You drew this." Milo nodded proudly. Maeve came closer. "I made these flowers." Preston looked at both children with overwhelming emotion. The Maeve asked in a soft, innocent voice, "Are you going to leave again?" That question broke something inside him. He looked at Jelani first, then back at the twins. "No," he said, "not now. A billionaire meets his children." That day changed Preston more than any business loss, victory, or public honor ever had. He cancelled every meeting. He stayed at the shelter for hours. At first, the twins were shy, then they become curious, then warm. Children know when affection is real. Preston asked about their favorite colors, bedtime stories, and what games they liked. Milo loved toy cars. Maeve loved music and tiny paper crowns. When Maeve learned Preston once knew how to play piano, her whole face lighted up. "Mama plays too," she said. Jelani smiled sadly. "Not as much anymore." Preston remembered the old Portland evening when Jelani played for children at the center and then later for him in the dim light of our apartment. That memory now felt almost unbearably precious. By late afternoon, Preston arranged for a private family suite in one of his company's safe long-stay residences. It was comfortable, discreet, and fully furnished. Jelani refused at first. "I'm not taking charity," she said. "It is not charity," Preston replied. "It is a responsibility." She looked at him carefully, then he said more quickly, "Please let me help." Jelani's pride fought with her exhaustion. In the end, the children decided for her in the most innocent way possible. Milo asked, "Will there be a bed?" "Yes," Preston said. Maeve asked, "A warm bath too?" "Yes." Maeve smiled at her mother. "Can we go, Mama?" Jelani lowered her eyes and nodded slowly. That evening, Preston personally drove them there. The twins sat in the back, looked out at the city lights with wonder. Jelani sat in the front, tense and quiet. Neither adult knew how to hold so many emotions at once. At the residence, the twins ran softly through the suite in amazement. "There are 2 beds," Milo said, "and a couch," Maeve added, "and towels," Jelani whispered to herself, as if even that detail felt like grace. Preston stood near the door, watching them. This simple space, which he once would have viewed as temporary and ordinary, now looked scared. Because for the first time in years, his children were safe indoors because of him. He turned to Jelani. "A pediatric doctor will come by tomorrow just to check the twins. A family care coordinator too. I also arranged groceries." Jelani looked overwhelmed. "This is too much." "It is not enough," he said honestly. That answer stayed with her. Before he left, Maeve ran to him and hugged his leg without warning. Preston froze. Then very gently he placed a hand on her back. Milo joined too. Jelani watched from a few feet away, tears rising silently. When Preston finally stepped out into the hallway, he stood there alone for a long time. He was no longer just a billionaire. He was a father of 2. He was the father who had arrived late, and now he had to decide what kind of man he would become next. The slow return of trust. The weeks that followed were not simple, but they were real. Preston did not try to fix everything with money alone. For the first time in his adult life, he understood that presence mattered more than image, so he showed up. He came for breakfast before work. He visited after meetings. He learned the twins' routine and food preferences, fears, and favorite songs. Milo liked building little cities out of the blocks. Maeve loved sitting close while Jelani hummed old melodies. Both children quickly became attached to him, but not because he was rich. They attached to him because he listened. He knelt to their height. He remembered things they said. He made time. One night Milo had bad dream and woke crying. Jelani tried to calm him, but the boy kept asking, "Is he coming back tomorrow?" Preston had visited earlier and promised he would return in the morning. Jelani pulled the blanket higher around Milo and said, "Yes, sweetheart, he will." Milo finally relaxed. That woman told Jelani more than she expected. The children were already building trust. She wanted to protect them, but she also could not deny what she saw in Preston. He was trying, truly trying. One afternoon, while the twins painted at the table, Preston and Jelani sat across from each other with coffee. The room was quiet, except for soft cartoon music in the background. Preston asked, "Did you hate me?" Jelani looked at him for a long moment before answering. "No, not even a little. I was hurt, I was confused, I was angry at life, but hate takes energy, and I needed all my energy to survive." He lowered his eyes. "I did not tell the twins bad things about you," she continued. "I told them their father had kind eyes and a good heart. I told them life had made things complicated. Preston looked at her with deep emotion. After everything, you still protected the idea of me. I protected their hearts, she said softly. He nodded. Still, thank you. Delaney hesitated, then asked, did you ever marry? No. Anyone serious? No one real enough. Her eyes softened for just a second. He looked at her more carefully. And you? No. That answer carried more than either wanted to admit. As days passed, Delaney also saw another side of the Preston. He was patient with the twins, gentle in quick movements, sometimes awkward but sincere. He had never been around young children much, but he learned quickly. He read stories in a serious voice that made me laugh. He built towers badly and let Milo teach him. He once cut fruits into strange, uneven shapes and proudly called it art. The children adored him for it, and Delaney began to see the young man from Portland beneath the hard billionaire shell. One evening, after the twins fell asleep, she found Preston standing near the window, looked out at the city. Long day, she said. He gave a quick smile. The longest short day of my life. She stood beside him. After a moment, he said, I lost years with them. Yes, Delaney replied honestly and withdrew. She did not answer. He continued, I cannot change that, but I want to be worthy of what is still possible. Delaney looked at him then, really looked. He was still strong, still successful, still commanding. But tonight he looked humble. That mattered more. The woman behind the hardship. As stability returned, parts of Delaney's old self began to return too. She started playing piano again after Preston arranged for a small keyboard in the suite. At first, she only touched the keys lightly, as if afraid music might hurt. Then one evening, Meave asked for the moon song Delaney used to sing when they stayed in shelters. Delaney began to play. The melody was simple, warm, and full of memory. Preston stood in the kitchen doorway listening. The same feeling from years ago come back to him. She still had that gift. She could make a room feel safe with sound alone. After she finished, Meave clapped. Milo smiled sleepily. Preston said quickly, you should teach again. Delaney shook her hand. Life moved too far from that. It does not have to stay there. Within 2 weeks, Preston used his network to connect Delaney with a community arts foundation looking for part-time children's music educators. He did not force it, he simply gave her the option. Delaney earned the opportunity on her own during the interview. When she got the position, her eyes filled with stunned gratitude. I thought that part of my life was gone, she admitted. Preston smiled. Maybe it was only waiting. Slowly, Delaney started working again, a few hours at first, then more. She returned each day looking lighter, not because she was being rescued by wealth, but because she was reclaiming her own identity. That difference mattered deeply to her. She never wanted the children to think their future came only from someone else's fortune. She wanted them to know dignity, effort, and self-respect. Preston understood that better now. He stopped offering solutions that sounded too large and started offering support that felt respectful. They began making decisions together about the twins' schooling, medical care, and housing. A rhythm formed, and with rhythm came tenderness. One rainy evening, the twins fell asleep early after a full day at the park. Delaney stood in the kitchen, raising cups when Preston joined her. You look tired, he said. I am, she replied with a smile. But it is good kind. He leaned against the counter. You used to say that after teaching early. She glanced at him. You remember that? I remember everything about that summer. The room grew quiet. After a moment, Delaney said, I tried to hate those memories for a while. It would have made life easier. And did it? No, because they were some of the happiest days I ever had. Preston looked at her as if that truth carried both comfort and pain. Then, very carefully, he asked, "Do you think we could ever have something like that again?" Jelani did not answer right away. She dried her hands slowly and looked toward the sleeping twins' room. Finally, she said, "Not the same," he nodded, accepting it. Then she added, "But maybe something more honest." That answer stayed with him long after he left. The world noticed. At first, no one knew Preston Hale had personally become involved with a homeless mother and her twins after the shelter meeting. But wealthy men rarely move quietly for long. A private staff member at one of his buildings mentioned his frequent visits. A local blogger noticed Jelani's new role at the Arts Foundation and connected old details. Soon enough, rumors began. Then one media outlet published a speculative piece with the headline, "Billionaire's Secret Family Connection Raises Questions." Naomi sighed first and immediately informed Preston. He read the article in silence. It was not fully accurate, but it was invasive enough. "We can shut parts of this down," Naomi said. Preston shook his head. "No." She looked surprised. "No hiding," he said. "Not anymore." Jelani felt different. When she saw the article, old fear rose in her chest. She worried for the twins. She worried for the public would reduce their pain to scandal. She worried Preston would step back to protect his image. Instead, he came directly to see her. They sat at the small dining table while the twins built a castle nearby. Preston said, "I will not let the media define this." Jelani studied his face. "You do not have to do anything dramatic." "I am not doing it for drama." I took a breath. He took a breath. "I am doing it because they are my children and you matter to me." That evening, Preston released a short public statement through his office. He confirmed that he had recently learned of a deeply personal family matter involving Jelani's Brooks and twin children who are now under his full care and support. He asked for privacy and respect, especially for my children. He added one line that caught public attention. "Some truths arrive late, but that does not make them less sacred." The statement changed the tone of the public reaction. People expected Daniel. They got responsibility. Even Jelani, reading that line in silence, felt tears rise. For the first time in years, she felt something unexpected. She felt protected. The night of the truth. Winter deepened. The city grew colder, but their little family circle grew warmer. By January, Preston had arranged a beautiful townhouse for Jelani and the twins in the quiet neighborhood near parks and schools. Jelani accepted it only after long discussion and legal protections that made the home secure for the children, regardless of future uncertainty. Preston respected every condition. That was new for him too. He was learning that love could not be managed like a contract. It had to be honored. One Saturday night, after moving into the townhouse, Jelani invited Preston for dinner. Nothing fancy. Pasta, warm bread, simple salad, apple slices for the twins. But for Preston, it felt more meaningful than any luxury meal he had attended in years. After dinner, the twins begged for a movie. Halfway through, both fell asleep on the couch under a shared blanket. Jelani covered them gently. The house became quiet. Snow began falling outside. Preston stood near the window watching the street turn white. Jelani joined him with 2 mugs of tea. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Preston said softly, "This is the first home moment I have had in years that felt real." Jelani handed him the tea. "I know what you mean." He turned toward her. "Do you?" "Yes, for a long time survival took all the space. There was no room left to feel settled." He nodded. Then he said something she had never heard from him before. I was arrogant. She looked at him. I told myself I was protecting my heart after losing you. But really, I left pain turn into pride. I built an empire while becoming smaller inside. Jelani listened quickly. I do not want to be that man anymore. You are not exactly that man now, she said. Not completely, but I still have to face who I was. The snow thickened outside. Jelani held her tea with both hands. I changed too. Hard times make you less soft in some ways. Not in the ways that matter, Preston replied. Their eyes met. Then he took one careful step closer. Jelani, I have loved you in memory. I have loved you in regret. I have loved you in silence. But now I am standing here with the chance of love you in truth. I do not want to waste it. Her lips parted, but no words came first. He continued, his voice low and steady. I know trust cannot return in a single speech. I know we lost too much time, but I also know this: when the twins called me dad, I felt like life opened a door I did not deserve, but desperately needed. Jelani's eyes filled with tears. I'm not asking you to forget the past, he said. I'm asking whether your heart still has room for a future with me. The room was silent except for the faint sound of the movies still playing in the background. Jelani looked toward the twins sleeping on the couch, then back at Preston. There were nights, she whispered, I wanted to stop believing in good endings, but I could never fully stop. He stood very still. She took a slow breath. Part of me had never stopped loving you either. The words landed between them like warmth after years of cold. Preston closed his eyes briefly, as if he needed a second to survive the feeling. When he opened them again, Jelani stepped closer. No grand performance, no dramatic rush, just two people who had carried each other in silence for years. Preston lifted his hand gently to her cheek, waiting for permission. She leaned into it. Then they embraced. It was not the embrace of strangers starting something new. It was the embrace of two souls finally returning to the place where truth had been waiting. That night, they did not need noise, perfection, or public celebration. They needed honesty. They sat together for hours after the movie ended and the snow covered the streets outside. They talked about everything they had lost, everything they feared, and everything they still wanted. A real home, shared mornings, waiting for the twins, a family built not on image but on presence. And by the end of that night, both knew something with certainty. The shocking truth was not only that the twins were his, the deeper truth was that love had never fully left either of them. A new beginning. Spring came slowly, but when it arrived, it brought change with it. Milo and Neve started preschools. Jelani expanded her teaching role at the Arts Foundation and introduced music sessions and children in housing shelters. Preston founded the program quickly, but he kept the focus on our work, not his name. That choice meant a lot to Jelani. He was no longer trying to lead every room. He was learning to stand beside her. The twins grew happier with stability. Milo laughed more loudly now. Maeve sang while brushing her doll's hair. They started drawing family pictures again, but this time the people in the drawings had names and a real living room behind them. One afternoon, Preston came home early to the townhouse and found a page taped to the fridge. It was another drawing by Milo. 4 people holding hands under a bright yellow sun. At the top, in large, uneven letters, Maeve had written, "My family." Preston stared at it for a long moment. Then Jelani came beside him and rested her head lightly against his shoulder. He whispered, "I do not deserve this." She replied softly, "Maybe none of us deserve grace, but we still receive it." Months later, Preston took Jelani and twins back to the Portland for a weekend. They visited the old community center where Delaney once taught music. The piano room was still there, dustier, smaller than memory, but still there. Maeve sat on the piano bench and pressed one uncertain key. Milo laughed. Preston watched Delaney's face as she took in the room. "Do you miss it?" he asked. She smiled. "Not anymore, because life got better, because the best parts of it found me again." He took her hand. By summer, their story had become known in a gentler way, not scandal, not gossip, more like a rare reminder that responsibility, humility, and late truth still mattered. People spoke of Preston differently now. Yes, he was still powerful. Yes, he was a still billionaire, but those closest to him said he had changed. He smiled more, he listened more, and he left the office earlier. He built things that served people, not only profit, and when asked privately what changed him, he once answered with quick honesty, "Two small voices called me dad before I had earned it." The promise of home. One evening, nearly a year after the shelter meeting, Preston invited Delaney to a rooftop garden above one of his newest buildings. The twins were with Naomi, who had become like family to them. The rooftop was simple and beautiful. Lanterns glowed softly, music played low in the background, the city lights stretched below like stars. Delaney smiled as she stepped into the space. "This is beautiful." Preston looked more nervous than she had seen him in years. That alone made her heart soften. He took her hands. Delaney, he said, "I spent years building. Delaney, he said, "I spent years building things I thought would make life meaningful, but none of them compared to the life I found with you and the children." Her eyes were already shining. "You gave me the chance to become more than successful. You gave me the chance to become human again." She laughed softly through tears. "That is a very serious line." He smiled. "It is also true." Then he grew still again. "I loved you when life was easy. I loved you when life became painful. I loved you when I thought I had lost you. I love you now in the clearest way I know." He reached into his coat and took out a ring. "Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life earning the family I almost lost?" Delaney covered her mouth as tears slipped down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. Then, stronger, smiling through tears, she said yes. When he placed the ring on her finger, the city below kept shining like nothing had changed. But for them, everything had. The ending they thought was gone. Their wedding was held in the garden outside Seattle the following spring. Not huge, not dramatic, just beautiful. Milo wore a tiny grey suit and carried the rings with deep seriousness. Maeve scattered flowers petals with such joy that people laughed and carried at the same time. Naomi sat in the front of row, wiping tears more than once. During the ceremony, Delaney looked at Preston and said, "Life took the long road to bring us here." He answered, "But it still brought us home." After the wedding, they moved into a warm family house with a music room for Delaney, a playroom for the twins, and the sturdy Preston rarely entered on weekends anymore. That was another miracle. He had learned that being present at breakfast, bedtime, school events, and piano recitals mattered more than one more meeting. Delaney's shelter music program expanded into 3 cities. Preston Business Foundation partnered with housing groups for single mothers and children. Milo grew into a curious boy who loved building model cities. Maeve grew into a bright little singer who believed every family dinner should end with a song. And sometimes late at the night, when the house was quiet and the children were asleep, Delaney would sit at the piano and play the old melody from the shelter days. Preston would stand nearby listening. Then he would walk over, kiss her gently, and say the same words every time we found our way, and she would answer, "Yes, we did." So, this was the story of Preston Hale, the billionaire who ignored a homeless mother without knowing she carried the deepest truth of his life. This was the story of Denani Brooks, the woman who endured pain, poverty, and uncertainty, yet still raised her twins with grace and dignity. And this was the story of Milo and Maeve, two innocent children whose simple words opened a locked door between the past and the future. Sometimes life does not break because love is gone. Sometimes life breaks because truth arrives late. But even late, truth can heal. Even delayed, love can return. Even a man surrounded by wealth can remain poor inside until he learns what truly matters. And sometimes the most powerful voice in a room does not belong to a billionaire, a reporter, or a board member. Sometimes it belongs to a child who looks into a stranger's face and says the one word that changes everything. Thank you.